Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of season 1 of Prime Video's new video game adaptation, Fallout. And this is a show that I was anticipating because it looked really interesting. I never played the game. Even though I know the game is a very popular game, I never played 1 second of that game. And I'm a video game nut, but for some strange reason, I never played the game. And so I went into this show very new, green, just prepared for whatever, with no expectations on the story and, how things were going to play out and how close it was to the lore. And sometimes it's good to go into films like that or TV shows like that. Me being a comic book nut, when I go see comic book movies and it's completely different from what the comic books are, it kind of takes you out of the movie. Even though the movie can be good, it can be interesting, but at times the changes that they make for TV or film can take you out of the movie if you're a fan of that source material. And so, and not just with comic books and stuff, it could be a novel, it could be whatever the case may be. I remember, and trust me, I'm going to review this show. I remember the outcry when Jack Reacher, I'm talking about the films that starred Tom Cruise. People who are fan of the Lee Child novels of Jack Reacher were livid that Tom Cruise was cast as Jack Reacher, because Jack Reacher in the books is more like the Alan Richson character or person who plays the character in the actual TV show, which is coincidentally also on Prime. And Tom Cruise is like 5 foot nothing playing this gigantic character. But I love Jack Reacher, at least the first one. I love that movie. But I can understand how people were kind of thrown off by that. But I went into this completely blind, not knowing anything. If you don't know anything, here's the premise to Fallout. The show depicts the aftermath of an apocalyptic nuclear exchange in an alternate history of Earth, where advances in nuclear technology after World War II lead to the emergence of retro-futuristic society and a resource war. The survivors take refuge in fallout bunkers known as vaults, built to preserve humanity in the event of nuclear annihilation. 219 years later, a young woman named Lucy leaves behind her home in Vault 33 to venture out into the dangerous, unforgiving wasteland of a devastated Los Angeles to look for her father. Along the way, she meets a Brotherhood of Steel sire and a ghoul bounty hunter, each with their own mysterious past and agendas to settle. This show stars Ella Purnell, Kyle MacLachlan, and Walton Goggins, as well as Aaron Morton. This was a very good show. I was super satisfied with the 8 episodes that we got in this series. This was produced, or one of the producers here was Jonathan Nolan, who is the brother of Christopher Nolan. But he's not just riding off the success of his brother. He has success of his own. He gave us Westworld on HBO. He also co-wrote The Dark Knight Rises, and many other projects. He's very successful and very good at what he does. So he's not just Christopher Nolan's brother. He actually has a stellar career, and his name being plastered on this show helped it. And starting off with our stars here, our stars of this show are perfectly cast. Ella Purnell, who is If you don't know who she is, she's the girl with the anime eyes. I always say this. That's how I describe her. She has these big eyes, big, beautiful eyes, and it just stands out. That's her greatest feature. And we have seen her on Yellow Jackets, on Army of the Dead. She's building a pretty good career for herself. Aside from Yellow Jackets, which I enjoyed her, I felt is her best work. Uh, this rivals that. This is like uh, with Yellow Jackets. This is 1A 1B with Fallout as far as her acting. I loved her character here as Lucy McClane. I just loved the way she played this character. She wasn't just a naive fish out of water, being in a vault for her entire life and venturing out into the world, and you expecting her to be just this doofus and don't know how the world works and whatnot. It wasn't that. Even though there is elements of that, of course. She doesn't know how things work, but she was told pretty early on, in order to survive on the surface, she has to adapt to the surface. And she began to adapt, but she still kept her core, who she is as a person throughout this season. And man, good job, because normally a character will have this dramatic change by the end of the season, which she does go through some changes. Don't get me wrong. There are changes to her character, but at the end of the day, she's still Lucy. And Ella played this beautifully. Really enjoyed her here. The other story, or the other character that got a lot of the focus in this season, was the character of Maximus, who was played by Aaron Morton. And he plays a squire in the Brotherhood of Steel. And like I said, I don't know how the game works, but how this faction is set up, very cult like. And he's just this, like, the lowest of the low, and he has to work his way up, work his way up to be where he is in the ranks. He was all right. I think I liked the character. I didn't so much like the performance. The performance was kind of bland at times. I liked it in certain episodes, but the majority of the episodes, I really didn't like Aaron's performance here. He just had that one facial expression every episode. Whether he was mad, sad, happy, whatever, it was the same facial expression. He didn't emote enough for me. Towards the end of the season, I want to say episode 7 and 8, we finally got, a smile, and it was shocking in a sense, but he should have been did that. But overall, I like the character. It was just the performance wasn't quite there with me. But the star of this series is Walton Goggins. Walton Goggins, man, did God's work in this season. He plays the ghoul, or slash Cooper Howard here, and boy, what a performance! One of his best performances. And Walton Goggins has been killing it in everything he's in, and I'm a huge fan of Walton Goggins. I'm talking going back to Justified, and Django Unchained, and The Hateful Eight, and so on and so forth. But his comedies with Vice Principals and The Righteous Gemstones and all these, he is so versatile. But I loved him here, and he used all of those elements, comedy, drama, all that wrapped up in this performance, in this series. And awesome performance by him. Really enjoyed him. He was truly the star of this show. I don't know if it was intended for him to be the star. I know that Ella Purnell is the quote unquote star, the lead of this series, but Walton Goggins, I think he stole it from her in this season. But that's no knock on Ella. She did awesome, but he's Walton Goggins, man. I love that character. The supporting cast, we got a real strong supporting cast here, and some out of left field guest stars and cameos. It was really unexpected, in these little small roles, but they helped move the show forward. And they weren't there to steal the scene. They weren't there to, take the spotlight off of our main characters. They were just there to move the story along and uh, did their job. And that was that. I like that element of it. The structure of this show, I think, is the best you can do with this show. Once again, not knowing how the games are set up, but I liked the flow, the tone. It flowed perfectly. Going back and forth in time, because this is like there's a 200-year gap in time here. So there's a real distance between where it began and where it ended. So a lot of story had to be told. A lot of filler had to be dumped in there, and it was done pretty well. It was written really well. I love the balance of the action and the gore and the comedy. The comedy came in the right spots. That's one of the biggest things I noticed in this show. It could easily had come off as cheesy. They could have done the cheesy route with it, but it was funny for goodness sakes. It was perfectly placed jokes, and it worked in the middle of the action, in the middle of a heavy scene or something like that to kind of break the tension or whatever the case may be. It flowed. It wasn't just a corny dad joke or something like that. It was real comedy, real world interactions. I like that about it. It really stuck out throughout the season. And the special effects. Prime Video did not spare no expense on this show. This is some of the best visual effects I've seen on a TV show. Now, it wasn't perfect. There was one creature in this film, not film, but TV show that just was so cheap looking, but it looked cheap looking from the jump. And I guess that was the look they were going for. So I'm not really knocking it for it, but it just looked bad. But everything else looked amazing. The scale and landscapes looked beautiful. It was, this desolate wasteland. It was perfect. And I must say, this is one of the best looking apocalyptic TV show or films I have seen in a long time. It felt like a lived in world. This felt like the world blew up. It really looked like we was in the apocalypse after a nuclear war. It looked like that, because I've seen films, and I'm pretty sure you've seen films where it's so tightly shot that it just looks like a 3-mile radius was affected by whatever took place. But here it really feels like the entire world went through hell, and it was a disturbing look. It really looked disturbing. And I mean, kudos to the filmmakers, to the set designers and production designers who worked on this show. This really felt lived in, these desolate towns that Lucy traveled to, and so on and so forth. Even the vaults, because you go to different vaults in this film. I keep saying film in this show. I'm saying film because it was binged. The 8 hours. I just sat down and watched the whole series in one sitting. But it felt like a film. A 8 hour long film, but a film nonetheless. But anywho's, it's but the vaults felt lived in, and I appreciated it. And I loved, last but not least, in my goods, I loved the incorporations of this 60s style of film. I mean, everything looked like it came from the 60s. Like this show was made in 1963 or 4 or something like that, with the music and the designs of the cars and the wardrobe. Everything just had that 60s motif, and it looked great. It looked great. I enjoyed it for that. My negatives, like I said, I only had a couple of them. The performance by Aaron Morton as Maximus, kind of dry. I didn't really like his performance too much. Uh, the special effects on this one creature, I think in episode 4 or 5, can't remember which one, but you'll know it when you see it. If you've seen it, you know what I'm talking about. I just couldn't stand the look of that thing. It looked silly. It just looked silly. Everything else looked amazing. They had this like mutated bear that looked phenomenal. But this thing that came out of the water, pink looking thing, it just did not work for me. That was it for my negatives. I really didn't have any other negatives. This show worked for me. I really, really enjoyed it. Throughout the show, I was sitting here wondering, man, I wonder if fans of the video games are enjoying this. There I go again, film. Enjoying this TV show. Is this doing the TV show justice or the game justice? I don't know. I hope it is, because it worked for me. Fallout, which is currently on Prime Video, all 8 episodes can be binged, gets a letter grade of a B+. Yes, this was an awesome show, man. I was curious as to why they dropped all 8 episodes in binging fashion, because as of late, Prime Video hadn't done that. Like I've mentioned before, Reacher was week to week. Disney Plus do week to week with their shows. A lot of shows have kind of started doing the week to week format thing. Sometimes it's good, sometimes it's bad. Like for X-Men 97, I wish it was binged. I hate waiting a week, but I'm enjoying it for what it is. I'm not mad at this being binged, because the way the episodes are set up and the way things work out throughout the series, I think that it needed to flow. You couldn't wait. It wasn't real cliffhangers per se after every episode. Some episodes, yeah, but not every episode had a cliffhanger to whereas, oh man, can't wait for next week. But it was good. It was still good, and it was good to watch it just throughout. It worked for me that way. But I would like to know, how did you feel about Fallout? If you watched it, did you enjoy it? Are you a fan of the games? And how did you feel being a fan of the games? And if you haven't seen the show, are you planning on checking it out? I highly recommend it, me personally. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also look up the show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Search for the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Subscribe and like this video if you don't mind. Also, don't forget about the 5 stars, the reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Prime Video's brand new video game adaptation, Fallout. Can't wait to speak to you on the next go around. I want you all to know that I love you. Continue to love everyone. And until we speak again, you all be blessed.